I'll get it here. The 1980 fall is when they had the quantity made. And then when production started in 1881, they went back to a 1981 decal. They had the same decal, just had a different year on it. So those two figurines can appear with either a 1980 or a 1981 date. They can have either a trademark 1 or a trademark 2. They can have either a plain bronze base, or they can have a painted white base, or they can be in a brown box, or they can be in a blue box. Just one figurine. So look at all the variations. They're not really variations. All the different ways that that particular figurine can be presented. Both the owl and the masquerade in Petersburg. Alice in the Garden without a headband. Once again, similar situation as to Carousel Day. Started through, got the headband, without the headband. Bob didn't like it, stopped it, and put the headband on. Roughly 2 trays are out there. Alice has no headband. Anyone here have one? Anyone have Alice with no headband? Okay. How about an 80 masquerader owl? Okay, about 8 or 9. Very good. A signed and dated 1987. Now, those sets, when they first came out, you heard Bob talk about them and how they were received. He only dated one figurine, that was Capodimonte. And it's interesting to see them pop up because with a date on them, you could tell where he was. But we estimate there's somewhere around 100 sets out there that are signed and dated 1980 sets at the ballpark. How many have them? 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. Okay? Very good. Out and about figurine. This is kind of an unusual situation. Why not the rest of the figurines in 1982? Why aren't they valuable like Out and About? Well, Out and About wasn't made the second time. It was only made in one production run, whereby the remaining figurines in 1982 were all produced again. So that's why we have a short supply on Out and About. And any figurine that has the configuration or notation on it, first signed. Now, you all know what first signed means, just what it is. A brand new figurine, just into the marketplace. The first one that Bob signs of those figurines is marked first signed. That's what that means. And there's only one for each figurine. And please don't ask me what they're worth. I don't make the secondary market, I only report it. And see, it's like the stock market. And every time I play the stock market, I lose. And every time I try and guess what a figurine is going to do, I'm wrong. We're just going to report it. I don't know of any sales of a first signed figurine. Do you have something to say about it?
Yeah, I want to make a comment about this.
Okay, please.
Just a comment about first signs. He's bringing up all these things, and I know why they're rare. And on first sign, what I decided when I would come out and do the shows, and you people, many in this room, you showed up. All this work is so personal, and signing it is personal. So if you take a look at my collection, for instance, all of my pieces are number 1 signed, and I kept them for my family. And number 2 was given to my daughter. Number 3 was given to my son. Now, they haven't decided who gets number 2 and 3, but it's theirs. And I felt that as I traveled, I think in the last 3 years, I really decided, you people have been so great and so loyal, that I would tell Gerbil, I said, we have to give something back to these people. You know, we have to do that as a company. You can't just go out there and do shows and take people's money and leave it go at that. And I really mean that. And so, first sign was my way of saying thanks. And believe me, there's a lot of pressure on many people in the studio would love for me to do first sign. Be easy, hey Bob, do first sign for me. might change it, change it, change it. So I rest into a place. And once I rest into that spot, I'll stay there. I'll stay there for years and I won't move from it. So number one sign is special because I'm confronted with it. I've got you standing there and I'm looking at it thinking, where am I going to sign this piece? And so that's why the number one signs are special. So they're my gift back to you people, side to side. That's what makes them special. Okay?
Thank you for that insight, Bob. Now, let's talk about some of the things that have been popping up here recently. Everybody heard about U.S. as a busy student. In the Collector's Mart magazine that was just released, and by the way, there are copies that you may have on the registration table. My column for this month, I go into some of that as to why it happened, and we also discuss the Hummel, which I'm going to come to here in a minute, and where they're going to go and why. But the decal errors, by the way, I missed a couple of things. One which is very subtle, and you all are going to have to look carefully for this one. There were a very few Dresden dancer pre-Goebel that existed. They didn't, Bob was given a cutoff date. When he came under contract with Goebel on July 1st of 1979, he had to stop all production. There were a few Dresden dancers that had been painted but not shipped. They were put into the studio and a Goebel decal, trademark 1, was put on them. And so there are a few of those out there. We don't really know how many do we. An nominal amount, and I'm talking about a very small amount. There are very subtle differences in the painting, and if you read the book, you will find the difference between the two. Go look at yours, because you just might have one. One of the clues that you would have, one of the obvious clues would be the brown box that came in, because that would have received, that was probably one of the first 1,000 boxes that came in that had the gold Hummel work logo on it with kind of an ivory background and 3 little slots cut with an X-Acto knife in there where the figurine went under. That would be one clue, although not necessarily. It might have been held so it got with a regular tie down on it, but that's one thing you could look for. Another thing would be Indian Scout of Buffalo. Now that was recarved because there was a hole through it. And I know a couple of you have that particular figurine. There aren't many. Do we know quantity on that, Bob?
I'd say
Top's 18. It was very, very difficult to get out of the mold, and they decided to do away with the hole. But there are some Indian Scouts in Buffalo. The picture he had up there did have the hole through it. It's very obvious. It goes right underneath the buffalo. Another one would be, once again, the early box, the early brown box with the 3 little slots in it. That box has to be worth $75 now. I came upon an interesting one the other day. I found on the shelf in our inventory a 1984 Owl Daylight Encounter with a white base. What's wrong with that? Or what's unique about that? Anyone have any ideas? Oh, come on. Yes?
They were all made with a bronze base in 84, weren't they?
Starting when?
83?
82. Okay, that's right, very good. The studio, when they first started out, painted all the bases white, then put the decal over that. I'm starting to get the details and basics here, but it does apply to this. It was too expensive. With an extra step, it caused too much time, so they decided to do away with that step, and bases are just buffed, and then the decal is put on. This 84 Owl is white. Number of different reasons for that. It was probably just internal to the studio. I think I have a fluke, but on the other hand, it's something that's different, and we don't know how many are out there. So I'm just bringing these things up so you can look for these type of little things in your collection. Decal errors. We've had quite a few. last night that really makes my head bobble. This customer had a 1981 Blumenkinder, trademark 2. That's supposed to have a 630 studio mark on it. It said 620, Chipping Sparrow. So we were doing this all the way back in 1981. Now, I don't think that any of us have really examined our collections close enough to go back that far. But that exists. I saw it. It's here at the show. Probably the next one, which is pretty well known, I think, to you, was the Hummel figurine Stormy Weather. Now, Stormy Weather got a dial back decal. So Stormy Weather, there are about, once again, approximately a tray out there with a 252 dial back decal on it. We have in my column, and to a lot of you that have been passing around to let me know how many have them, we have documented 19 of them. And if any of you here have any of these that I'm going to read off, you do us all a great favor by dropping me a note, letting me know, and then I will report back to you. Talking about how do we report back? We're going to report back in my column in Collector's Mart magazine. Once I have it compiled these figures, we will feed them back to you. How does this happen? I mean, how can these decals get put on a figurine? I mean, they're looking at this figurine, why put the wrong decal on it? Not the way it works, right? Not a girl. Carol said, she's on top of that. Yeah, if you go back to the book under decals, you'll see they're all upside down. All the figurines are put in up. The decals are put on figurines, and it's brass side up. So all the person sees, puts on that decal, is a round piece of bronze. Have no idea what's underneath it. No idea. Now, this is a pretty repetitious job, folks. It really is, and I admire the lady who sits there and does this all the way. And the way it's done, the figurines are upside down. The decals, in order to make them easy handling, are floating in a little tray of water. It's an easy way to get the decal off the backing. So it's floating there in the water. The gal takes a brush and puts on some adhesive on the base. Now, once again, this base has been pretty well cleaned, because remember, it was on sticky tape going on its stick in the tray to the studio. We have to get all that gummy off of there. So it's very thoroughly cleaned. It's nice, bright, shiny bronze when she gets on there. She puts the adhesive on, and she delicately, with a little instrument, picks up the decal, puts it in place, centers it, picks up another one, puts it in place, centers it, picks up another one, gets that one, puts it off to one side for it to dry. Now, that group of figurines, she has no idea. She has no idea what she put on there, except someone told her to put that figurine on here, and that's what happens. You can get the right figurine on a right decal on the wrong figurine, and it's very easy to do. It just takes tremendous concentration and a great deal of quality control at the studio. And from time to time, these things happen. They're happening too often, and there's some very firm steps being taken right now to prevent or at least minimize this happening in the future. Let me run down what we found as far as decal problems. And there'll be some here that you don't know about yet. In addition to the Stormy Weather, it should have a 251, but it has a 252, which is double that. We have Gus, Cinderella's Gus. Gus should have a 171 studio mark. He has a 268, which is a Hummel Busy student. Very red-faced. We have documented 18 of those. So once again, I'm guessing a tray, plus or minus. Now we have a Pinocchio. Pinocchio is supposed to have a 686 studio mark. Got Jiminy Cricket 685. We have Snow White's Bashful. Now the studio marks on the Snow White dwarfs with a different series, different marking. Then they mark the S1 through S7. Bashful should have had an S5, but it actually had an S6, which is a grumpy. We have a Hummel Visiting and Invalid which should have a 255 studio mark. Got a 256 Apple Tree Boy. And we have Apple Tree Boy, just to keep this round robin. All three of these been here were done at the same time, so it was one of those little things. I think they had a bad week. Apple Tree Boy should have a 256, ends up with a 257, which is a Postman. We have Postman, which should have a 257. It's got invalids, 255. Had a great week. Then we have the first 5 of the 1988 Hummel, MI Hummel Rangers. I imagine everybody knows that story. For those who don't, I'll be brief. When those are, you know the convent must approve this. Bob doesn't get away with this freelance anymore. So the convent systems approves the production of the major figurine. Well, they send prototypes over there. Now there's no decal on it. There's nothing on the base, right? Just a plain base that goes over and it's approved. Now, once it's approved, it comes back to the studio. It gets run through the line, put the decal on it, gets shipped. Well, the studio, everyone knows what a trademark 3 is. Standard trademark been used since 1985. So that was made up, put on the D, and that had Olszewski name on the top. And start putting down these 5 MI Hummel figurines. Well, word got back to the convent that they showed it. The figurines got back. They turned it over and they said, "Oh my God, Himmel! Someone's name on a Hummel figurine." And they said, "Nobody's name goes on an MI Hummel figurine. Oh, we all know this, except MI Hummel." So the call came to the studio and says, "Stop production. We don't mean tonight. We mean now. No more figurines with Olszewski name on it." Well, it just happens to be that the little sweeper was the last one going down the line. So consequently, less of that particular figurine had the trademark 3. And a new figurine or a new decal was made, which is a trademark 5 series, which was then introduced. So the exact numbers of each one are really unknown. We just know that the little sweeper was the last one, and there were very, very few of those. So if you have the 1988 Hummels with the trademark 3, you have a fine, fine collection, especially L5. Let's talk about who's going to make the Hummels. There was a, yes. Yes, Bob wants to have a comment on quality control in the studio. After that, I would too.
This is what I love about what we do. See, this is why I said earlier, it's better to tell the truth, because it's more fascinating than anything you can make up. And, you know, I've been out here for 10, 11 years saying, hey, this is difficult to do. And anybody who wants to compete with us is going to find it out. Well, what happened to us? And we have gone through these changes. And I know a lot of you are successful in business and have your own businesses. And imagine what happened. This is why when I make a little statement in the talk, I say something like, maybe you have an 80, an 81, or 82 mark. I take you on it. Well, what does that mean? It's quality control. That's what it means. When I first came under contract, imagine someone telling me, after I did all these paintings, these doll houses, these paper mache pieces, someone coming to tell me what my work is going to look like. You better have a club and a shotgun. Okay? Right? Think about that. Someone's going to tell me what it's going to look like. That's number one. So in the early years, when I came under contract, I painted on all of those first 3 years pieces. Because what would happen? I trained those painters. We had no people. Every time we interviewed people, we had people who were crafty and liked to show up, and we trained them. So they would leave at 4:30, and I would sit at those benches I showed you, and I would paint on their pieces until 9 and 10 o'clock at night, until I would get them to look the way they should have been. Well, we did that, and of course that's not a great way to run a business, because you drive me into the ground, and you can't have quality control in an organization based on one person's idea of quality. That would mean that I could go in and I could shut the entire operation down by saying, I don't have the way it looks. That's ridiculous. You can't run a business like that. So we went through a transitional period, and I began in quality. I would make the masters, and I would work with Jane on making the masters. Eva would take them, and she would do the analysis. And in the early years, I mean, we shot from the hip. I would make it, hand Jane the master, and I would get on an airplane and take off, and they'd be back there trying to match the master. It was awful. And so when you look into those cabinets at the process sticks, those process sticks were a real step for us to begin to define quality. That's why they're so valuable. See, I'd like to tell you why they're valuable, why they're important, not just because someone says this is where it's valuable. What we did with the process sticks is we said, this is the way it looks, this is the way you make it look like this. You start, you paint it here, you paint it here, you paint it there. And so, those are very rare. There's only maybe 2 or at most 3 that are made for the studio. Well, what happened when our business exploded, and it did, we went from 1.4 to 1.8 to 3.4 million to $4 million in successive years. And the studio grew, and I was trying to run around and do quality control. Now here I have all these sculpting skills, and I'm trying to run a studio. It was ridiculous. And so we went through a transitional period where we tried to take the quality and we tried to put it back in the studio. It was not right to look at these people and say, do great quality because of my dream. These people could, some of them could care less about Bob Olszewski's dream. They wanted to go home to their families. They didn't want to stay and touch this tray up. See what I mean? And so we needed to figure out a system to define quality, and it is difficult. Very, very difficult. So what we did, we have gone through a number of transitional periods. This decal problem is a great example of quality control problems for us. And I'm fiercely proud of the quality because I know what we've gone through to produce it. But as an example, I ran production up through 88. And I was personally, bam, I was out there, they brought those trays up to me, and they didn't look right, they didn't go out the door, period. That was the end of it. Well then, you can see the number of pieces that we did grew. They couldn't have their cheap sculptor traveling and doing shows and doing quality and shutting the place down. So what we started to do was we started to instigate quality control. And we brought consultants in, and we began to attempt to put quality back into the hands of the production people. Now, there's no way a production person is going to quality control something like me. Not possible. It will not happen. So what we do, and this is why Eva's position is so important, is that what we do today is when I paint with Jane, I paint it for what we call the look. And the look means it was painted for the beauty. And so when I paint it for the beauty, I can care less about production. I'm going to make this thing just sing. Well, then what happens, and Jane paints in sympathy with me, and that's why her office is next to mine. So then what happens, once I get the look, she breaks out a process stick and gives it to Eva. And Eva comes in, and she paints in sympathy with the studio. Because if we painted them in sympathy with me, we'd never get the production out. So what Eva does is she tears the pieces apart, she reanalyzes them, and Eva cannot change the look. She's not allowed to change the look. She must come to me, and she must say, this is a very difficult process. What about this application? This is why Jane and Eve are so important. They've been with us both about 10 years. And so I will look at it, and if I feel, for instance, when I look into a tray of the peasant at the dovecote, you'll see that he's standing there next to where the doves are. And he has a very lyrical posture like this, and what I'm looking for is a highlight running down his arm. So artistically, I'm looking, does the piece hold together? Well, what Eva does is she builds into the piece the highlight, and I go down with her and say, we cannot take this out. This is what the heart of the piece is about. So she engineers all these things in and takes out the peripheral things that may cost us time. Unnecessary. And that's why we took the white off the base. Why spend all this time putting white on the base when you can take those extra hours and put it into the beauty of the piece? make sense. And so what happened in this transition, we tried to turn it over to the production staff. And it was awful because they would say to me, just as some examples, IQC, I look at the faces, you look at the faces. I tell them, these people look at the faces. And so, well, what's the face supposed to look like, Bob? Well, you like this. Well, for instance, on this piece, it should look cute. Oh yeah, cute. How are we going to write a spec on cute? Right? How are you going to get one eye up, one down? Is that cute? And so it was very hard to write specs on this. And so during that period of time, we had lots of conflict on the studio about quality control. Who owned it? Did I own it? Did the studio own it? And so what happened, the fellow that was in the studio, that was production manager during the time that most of the details were put on wrong, was fired. I mean, we went head to head and toe to toe on a daily basis. And I'm talking about daily basis. And those of you that know me, Marlene, different people, you know, when I see problems on work, I can't tell you what that's like for me to see these problems. So he wasn't open. He had to have some sensitivity to the art. You just can't cold-blooded go in there and say, tough, here's the spec on this piece, it looks okay. You have to have some sensitivity. So he's been fired, he's gone, and he was there for 2 years. And it was a very tough 2 years for us. And so what's happening now is, sure, you're going to see some, not bad quality, you're going to see some things that happen. Our worst quality is the best of anybody's. That's all I can say, is that you're going to see oddities like these decals. How embarrassing it is for us. And when you see the painting, let's say if we have 6 painters on the line, this is the way it used to be. And the early marks were rare if they were wrong. Why? Let's say Eva ran a line, which she did. She ran a line on the unicorn pendant. She ran a line on the geisha. And if she oversaw 6 people, there was no way that mark was going to be wrong at the end. No way. Well, then this production manager, we had all these lines of pieces, and he said, this is ridiculous to take these skills and have a person at the end of each line putting marks on. So he said, let's take 2 good line applicators and put them in one room, and we'll shoot all the pieces in there. You see what I mean? So they all went into this one room, and that's where the confusion with the application comes in. So what you're seeing, yes, these are trademark problems. But when they hit the studio, and this guy calls, okay, and I go back immediately, and I want to check the systems. And so I think we'll be in a blip, in a period of time when we have these things happen, and we'll probably go through some other growth cycle. And I think long term, over the history of our pieces, these will be rare. I do believe that, because we cannot ignore these problems. It's a very bad message into the market to have this many mark variances. And I can assure you right now, the studio is very closely and keenly watching these things. So, you know, if you've got one, again, it's a piece of history, it's a piece of time that you won't see again. And that's why it's important. So, for your information, okay?
Thank you, Bob. Just to wind that up, if any of you have any of these variations, decal errors, let me say, please drop me a note and let me know so we can document the numbers and we'll report back to you. The Hummel figurines. There was a decision made by Global Germany, and after all, it is their copyright, they can make those decisions, that they want to make the Hummel miniature figurines in Germany. This does not affect the regular Gerbil Miniatures company, the miniature Hummel and Hummel figurines. This is now in a try to do it stage. The 1992 figurines have been carved by Bob. They have been approved, and you know that much is going to originate here. Very candidly, no one really knows. Is that essentially correct, Ken? No one really knows right now exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that the watchword that is being considered, the testing done right now is absolute bombs.
Okay, thank you, Ken. You said they're testing right now. They're trying to find out if they can paint these small figurines. If they can, I don't think it's a matter of if, I think it's a matter of when, that they will move the production to Germany. They want complete control over it. So right now, it's up in the air, but the current plans, if they go through, that the 1992 miniature Hummels will be decorated or painted in Germany. Now they do use a little different technique in their painting over there. They're not going to be completely different. There will be some small changes, and maybe they'll be so subtle that we won't even know about them. So that's up in the air right now. What to do about a damaged figurine? Chipped figurines can be repaired. If the bronze is broken, nothing can be done with that. You can't put bronze pieces back together. The little paint chips, and I buy and sell hundreds of figurines, and I have to say that 65 to 75% of what I receive in are chipped. Now you don't realize it necessarily. These are very small, subtle chips, but they do happen. They can be repaired. And the way to do that is you contact the studio. Either you could call them or drop them a note, tell them the figurines that you have, essentially what the damage is. They will give you what they call an MRA. It's a material return authorization. You will then send your figurines to the studio. They will be repaired and be returned to you. Plan for a delay. That is a very tedious job. And you're looking at anywhere from 3 to 6 months. But when it comes back, in my opinion, it will have been repaired so well that I would challenge anyone to find out where the repair is. Because remember, let me tell you how hard this is. Let's take a figurine that's 5 years old. It's not the same color. It's not the same color as when it first made. It's faded. It's changed slightly. Subtly, it's changed. Now, if you go back and just pull the formula out of the box and say, okay, let's see, this takes so much white, so much blue, so much red, then the repair is going to show. That technician, and I call these painters, they are master painters, must actually match the color of your figurine right now. Is a tough job, and it takes time, but it's worth it. What happens if you have a damaged decal? If you have an old decal, an 80, an 81, 82, trademark 1 or trademark 2, where it's relatively obvious what the decal is, you have two options. You can either send it back and they'll put a current decal on it, or you can keep it as it is. And I would be inclined to leave it as it is, because there's very little doubt of the vintage of it. And instead of being a mint figurine, we'd call it near mint. But that's a judgment on your part. That is, and I really want to wind this up, because we have so much signing, we've got a lot to do. Are there any questions that I didn't cover that y'all like to throw up? Yes?
Have you ever seen any of the figures show crazing?
Have we shown crazed figures? I don't think our figurines are going to craze, because the paint put on there is so thin. Has anyone seen crazy? I don't think so. That's going to happen primarily on porcelain, and it shouldn't happen on these. Any other questions? Now, for any of you who don't have a copy of the book, it's available for sale right outside at the check-in counter. They're $15, and Bob and I will autograph them if you want to buy them. Thank you all very much for coming, and I know you got a great time. I'll turn back to Marlene.
Right now we're going to have a triad situation going on. We're going to have the art display, of course, for everyone. We'll have signing. They're getting Bob's table ready. And we're going to have the swap and sell. Give them a couple minutes. I don't know if everyone's left to go out and set up their swap and sell or not. I know everybody wants everything signed. Our goal today was to end early. We're ending late. We have to have a trade-off. This is information we're never, maybe ever going to have again. I know for some of you, you're real upset. We're doing our best. Bob will first sign either 1, gentleman's box hunt, or hunt with hounds, or 8 tiny reindeer for each of you, and he'll commemorate the convention. If you're a husband and wife, you each may have one, but one per person. He's going to try to get through everyone so that everyone has a turn. If he should do this, you can go to the end of the line, and we don't care how, we'll go 5 at a time, as many times you want to get in line. I doubt he's going to get through all 200 in the next hour and 45 minutes. We'll address that later. We'll do our best to get it done for everyone. Tonight, the banquet will start, and we need everyone down there promptly at 7 o'clock. Everyone will get their picture taken with Bob. They'll be developed tonight. You'll get to take them home tomorrow as a keepsake. But there's a lot of us here. We've got 1 hour to get them done. So please.
Where's Marlene there? Okay, this is yeah, who's the best there?
Here, we can go over there.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
We'll see you again.
Okay.
If I had it, I'd want to sell it. No, I don't want to sell it to me a long time. Thank you.
Okay, my pleasure. Okay. Okay.
Move.
5,299. Okay. All right.
Tell me what you do. Which one?
Take this one.
Okay. I wasn't sure what you
Definitely do the
All right. I had 2 opinions on this. I wasn't sure which one. Too sweet.
Patty, which one do you sign?
Oh, my pleasure.
Yes, I did. Very interesting. How about you?
Oh, very good. These are great things to discuss, but we never get to talk about it. Yep.
So different from the other shows. I'll be out looking.
I wish we had more time to talk. I want to get over and look at the other 3 ladies with the urn. I haven't gotten all the way around yet. This convention is a long enough.
The what?
Yeah,
It's set right into, it's set right into that.
to that large piece.
Yeah.
What's the large piece?
Got the wicked stepmother up there.
I hope I haven't missed.
Now that's not the first house that Snow White came out in.
That's really good.
That nativity scene over there you're talking
Yeah,
about,
I
that's
got
different. I had never seen that.
Not even produced.
Oh, I didn't think I'd ever seen it. I thought, well, what's this?
No, I mean, they have.
It's a really a kind of a happy birthday, dear.
on the top shelf. Second one. Too bad he didn't get a blue one. Wasn't it pink, green, and blue?
There's the brown.
Yeah. They're so beautiful.
I have 9. Is that good?
I have 9 pre-goals.
Oh, good. Wonderful.
Mine's almost ready for a sub, what do you call it? And you guys will still be something of the whole, like they have. Did you hear that? Sub club of mushroom club. Yeah, here at Toledo. Yeah. It's not really.
That's his down there.
I don't want you to have
I used to talk to them.
My sister says I have, when I get to Munster, I have to take the bus to ride.
The little train goes from. Yes, the little train.
Hi, Travis. There you go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Like that, one more time. I got a link on the first. One more time. There you go. Okay,
Bob's
right
loving
here.
this.
Thank you. You can say I'm always a good sport, right? Okay, here we go.
Put you up in a nice spot.
Yes, I talked to her last
Hey, Chuck, drop the camera.
Is it better?
Chuck is taking with us. Oh, he's taking the
Well, you gotta get the pointy shoes.
Look who you want to stand in.
Now you should go back.
No, not right.
I was after the force been doing a lot.
And that's it, right about like that. Sitting right there.
Where are you folks from? All right.
You know her. We sat next to each other.
We know. We're buddies from lunch. Hi, there's Sue.
Hi, Diane.
Hello.
Boy, is she.
What?
You know what I got?
for the banquet. This is the head table. The prizes. These are the banquet tables.
Can I go through?
Busy ladies tonight.
Busy ladies, yes, they are busy.
Busy ladies. We're always
You're a busy lady too.
very busy ladies.
Yes. There's the raffle that's going to be raffled off tonight.
This is the raffle that's going to be raffled off tonight.
And we need to turn that a little bit.
I can't touch it.
Sitting at a table like this and being able to, yeah, great.
Sticking to my ribs. Because I'm so hungry. If you have a big body, you got to feed it, you know? Don't you think so? That's it.
I'm Bob's brother Ray. Before I get started in reflection to Bob, I just want to say this event is awesome. And it's been a very humbling experience for me to meet all of you and see all of you people. Can you hear me all right? I do want to thank a couple of groups here and one individual. The Olszewski Study Group. I think they did a magnificent job of pulling this thing off. And also right behind them, from an information a dissemination perspective, this is very important to me, is the fan club. I think that what they're doing and what the Olszewski Study Group is doing and what Mr. Dick Hunt is doing is right on target. We need more information. So let me get into my spiel. But first I thought what I'd do is give you a little description of, or a little definition of the Olszewski name. I ran into another pair of Olszewskis here, other than Betty and myself and my brother Bob. But there's Paul and Rosemary Olszewski. They're also from the Pittsburgh area. And right now, I don't know if they're relatives or not. But we're going to find out. But the Olszewski name is a Polish name, and if you can break it up, the SKI means that you're of or you're from. So the Galembiewskis, the Franceskis, some of the other Polish people around here that I know are here. If you have the ski tag on the end of your name, that means you're from that area. Now, you guys are going to have to figure out where you're from. But the Olszewski's name is one who lives by the alder tree, alder, A-L-D-E-R. It's a very large stout tree. And it also could translate into one who derives his work from the woods. So you could actually say that maybe if transliterated, it could mean Bob and Ray Wood, something like that, or Paul and Rosemarie Wood. But anyway, that's the translation. I thought I'd give you a little bit of that. One thing else that I would like to mention is Bob threw up some great photographs today and brought some great memories back for me. And do you remember that family photograph that Bob showed of all these women? Okay, and there was only one guy in the whole bunch, and he was down in the front, and that was me. Been the story of my life. Always been surrounded by great women, and my wife Betty happens to be the best in my life right now, and will always will be. Oh, what's the afterthought?
Don't come down, Ray.
I know it. But we're here to have fun, and it's meant to be fun. But I want to tell you about that family. That's very unique, because a lot of those women in there, I didn't know who was cousins or aunts, because what had happened was that our grandparents, two sisters married two brothers, or two brothers married two sisters, okay, however you want to play it. And what they did was they built this very large house, and they split it right down the middle, and one side of the family lived on one side, and the other side lived on the other side. And of course, we were relatives on the one side, and we knew that they were relatives, but we always called them aunts and cousins, but they were different, different by name. So, but I just wanted to share that with you too. Growing up together. Well, I tell you, it's been an interesting. Let's see, probably 52 years. It'll be 52 years for me, and here come July. But Bob was taxing my creativity. I was 6 years old, 6 years old actually. He was 1 year old. He was taxing my creativity and feeding him his pablum. I mean, remember pablum? It's pretty bad stuff, and you really had to be creative to feed it to the babies, But I remember him sitting in this high chair, and I remember trying to feed it to him and making like planes, and choo-choo trains, and things of that nature. But at those early stages, he was taxing my creativity to feed him, and that was a chore. But I thought about what I was going to say to you, and Bob said a lot of the things. In fact, he stole a lot of my thunder. And but I was glad to see that, because I can reflect back and kind of add credibility to what he was saying. Not that I have to, but it's certainly part of the program. But I wanted to reflect on why did he choose this? What made him get into the art? And I sensed that I kept looking back and I was saying, well, Mom always used to talk about her artwork when she was in school. Mom went to the 8th grade, as did a lot of the families back in those days. Highest education that she had. And she used to tell us about that she was an artist, and she used to paint, and she used to win prizes at the Catholic school down in near where we live now, or where Mom lives now. Dad, on the other hand, was creative in his own right. He was a gardener. You had to be creative in the way you grew things. He was a gardener from laying out flower beds. You had to be artistic into doing that. And I remember Dad drawing what I call finger cartoons. And basically what he would do is to just take a blank piece of paper, and I don't know if you remember this, Bob, or not, but he'd take a blank piece of paper, and he'd take a pencil or a pen or something, and he'd outline the fingers against that paper and remove the hand away from that. And he would add eyes and ears and a mouth, and then he'd put a hat on it, depending on what he wanted to project in his creation. And that was Dad, from the artistic point of view. Me, I went to school. Bob took all the academic courses. I took all the easy courses. I took art, shop, and printing. But when I look back at those things, I'm really glad that I did, because it instilled in me this creativeness, and I think that's in our family. I think it's a hard, rock solid feeling that we have, or talent that we have in our family. I later became a woodworker and enjoyed woodworking, enjoyed art and creations and what have you. Later in life, of course, Bob talked about John, stepdad. He was more of a stepdad to Bob than he was to me. He was more of a buddy. I was already 21 or 22 years old when he married Mom. And but John, again, as Bob depicted him, was a very, very colorful guy, and he was a lot of fun. And Bob was a little bit younger, and I used to go drinking with John, and we had some good times. But he never got in a bar fight. I always talked him out of it. I said, "No, you don't want to mess with that guy. He's all right. Leave him alone. Don't hurt him, John. Leave him alone." But John came up with his creation. His creativity was in the. He was an avid fisherman, and he made these jigs, fishing jigs, bucktail jigs. And matter of fact, I brought Bob a birthday present, May 2nd, and wanted to have it ready for him before when he came and visited me in last month. And it was a display of some of these jigs that John had made, these fishing lures that John had made, and they're very colorful. And he worked very hard at them. He was very, very proud of them. But so you can see that we've had a lot of creativity. Now, work ethic. We all had. Bob and I both have a very strong work ethic. I'm not sure if we try to outdo each other or not, but I think we're about on equal grounds there. Mom, I don't ever remember Mom not working. She was just a hard worker, cleaning houses for doctors, taking in laundry. I remember, taking my brother, and we would go down and pick up the clothes and bring them in, the shirts and what have you. Dad was he was a craneman, had a big responsibility, lifting these big ladles of hot molten steel, and he was a hard worker, and he worked hard in his yard and in his garden. Me, I did a lot of hard work. I was older. I was cutting grass up in the cemetery, make a little extra, what we call pin money, and up at the cemetery for 30 cents an hour. But in Bob, he didn't do anything that I remember. Dad would say, "Get out there and pull the weeds in the garden." I said, "Yes, sir," and I'd go do my thing. I said, "Well, why isn't Bob? He's too small. He's too small." Yeah, right. One of these days. Bob talked about the color, and I never looked back at that and said, we had a colorful yard. It wasn't until Bob said that to me, or said it to the audience, that we really had a beautiful, colorful yard. The red vegetables, the red ripe tomatoes, the different colors of peppers. We had peach trees, the cherry trees that Bob talked about this morning. The bantam roosters, and the flower gardens, just absolutely beautiful. And thanks for bringing that out for me. I appreciate that. Bob has taught me a lot about looking and seeing things. as he mentioned, that Joe Reisner, his friend, who I also know Joe, taught Bob. Speaking of flower gardens, I have to mention this. I remember Bob, I can't remember how old he was at the time. He was just a little tight, probably 4, maybe, something like that. And this is kind of symbolic, and the only reason I mention it is because of the potential symbolism. I remember one day he came up to me and he says, "Hey Ray," I think he was Ramey. They used to call me Ramey, R-A-Y-M-E. And he says, "Hey Ramey," he says, "Look." And he opened up his hand, and there was one of these very large bumblebees. You know, these big yellow jacket with the yellow. And I looked at that and I said, "My God, it hadn't stung him. You know, this is awesome," because they release a pretty powerful sting. So bees, okay, you know, today, some kind of a symbol there. I'm reaching a little bit. You know what I'm getting at. Well, we were typical brothers. He was very much a pain in the ass. You know, Mom was always telling him, "Take your brother along." I was going to a movie, you know, with the guys, you know. And, take your brother. You're not going unless you take your brother. Threat, you know, blackmail. I had to take my brother. And we'd have a lot of fun coming back from the movies. I don't know if you remember those days. We'd have to walk over, what was it, about 2 miles, I guess, maybe a mile and a half to the movies. And on the way back, it would be dark, okay? And and I would run from my brother, right? I'd run up ahead of him, right? And he'd be standing there. "Whoa, what am I doing out here? It's dark, you know, dark road." They don't have streetlights then, right? And then he'd start walking real slow, and I'd scare him, right? And start crying. But anyway, but sometimes I feel sorry for him. I carry him on my shoulders, and we'd run from telephone pole to telephone pole, and then stop, and then we'd run and walk a little bit, and then we'd run. Remember those days? Yeah, that was a lot of fun. But another thing was interesting was I always get him in trouble, or we'd get ourselves in trouble. Remember Christmas time, we'd look around the house and find all the Christmas presents that Mom and Dad would hide. And I'd say, "Come on, let's look in here." And we'd look in there. And then Christmas morning, I'd kick him and say, "Act surprised."
I feel like the older brother got the little one in trouble.
He's the one that told me there was no Santa, so...
There is a Santa, right? Yeah, right. That's the right answer. That's right. But I remember listening to the radio with my brother. You know, the Lone Ranger. Lone Ranger was on TV, if I remember. You know, and the Green Hornet. You know, the Shadow Knows. You know, those kind of programs. Sit around, you know, with Dad. You know, and Mom listened to those programs. But Boy Scouts. I was a Boy Scout. I don't know. Were you ever in the Boy Scouts? I can't remember. Yeah, you were. And I used to come home, you know, older guy. You know, I come home from these senior scout conventions. What do they call them? Jamborees. And I come home with these really weird ghost stories. And you know, he'd go to bed with these things dancing around in his mind. Yeah, all that creativity. That's right. That's right. What else did we do? Model airplanes, model cars, we did it all. But what was more important was what we found things to do when we ran out of things to do or didn't have anything to play with or something, you know. We created things. We get down to Pennywise Supermarket, which is down at the end of the street, and pick up the fruit cases, you know, the wooden shipping crates. Orange crates, yeah, stuff like that. And the grape crates were really good too. And we'd come home and I'd make gum band guns. You know what they were? Remember what those guys? How about you guys? You remember those, right? Well, we'd have a pistol, you know, and we'd have a rifle, Then we had a derivative of a kind of a rapid fire machine gun. They had about 2 or 3, real long thing, And Gatling gun. That's right. That's good. Man of my own heart. Well, you guys really talk about. Well, I mention this because when Bob was David and Bob, he called me one day and he said, hey Ray, remember those gun band guns you used to make? I said, yeah. He says, do you think that you can show or send one out and make one for David when you come out? Well, that's right, I was visiting you. And he says, do you think you could show David how to make them? I says, yeah, that'd be neat. That'd be a neat project, something for me to do while I'm out there. Other than talk to Bob. But I got out there, and this was later on, of course. And I said, okay, David, we're going to have a project, and we got the wood and made these gun band guns. Well, we had a great time with them. And he started selling them to his friends. And I said, this is great. What an entrepreneur this kid is. So, and I don't know how many, did he make some more?
Yes, he made money on it.
Yeah, he made money. All right, that kind of guy. But we had Rector sets, Bob mentioned it this morning, the Tinker Toys, the Lincoln Logs, excuse me. The model trains, model planes. We did things down in the basement. We had a coal cellar. Oh, that was another colorful thing, believe it or not, coal cellars. Well, next to the coal cellar, fruit cellar, that's what I'm trying to say. And Mom did a lot of canning, and if you all did that, and if you come from homes that did that, think about that. There's a lot of color there. The peaches, and the cucumbers, and all that color right there. So you have to think about it, in the darkest places of the home. I have to tell you this story. I can't remember what I did, but I got spanking one time, real bad, from my dad. And I really don't remember what it was for, but it was pretty bad because...
You hit me?
No. But Dad was a very strict disciplinarian. And it must have been pretty bad because he said, get down the cellar, boy. And he started taking off his strap. And he took off, and it wasn't a little thin thing, it was one of these big wide things, Stillman, he had a good gut on him. And he says, okay. He says, put your hand on one of these poles that go up and hold the ceiling beam. He says, put your hand on there. And he says, start going around it. And every time I went around, whack. And I don't know how many times he did that. But my brother was standing up at the top of the steps laughing. Yeah, he's still laughing. Yeah. Well, Bob talked about moving from our home, the one that we were living in those movies that I showed this morning. That was a very happy time. Now, I'll reiterate what Bob said earlier this morning. We moved into that apartment, and it was all downhill from there as far as I'm concerned, as far as our family was concerned. Dad had died 2 weeks after we got into that apartment, or just about then. And, I lost a good friend. I was 14 years old. Bob was, I think, 9. And, we needed Dad about that time. And so we did the best we could. Mom was, we respected our mom, and we supported her, and we did everything we could. We had close relatives that helped us out. And when I used to sit on a corner there, and Bob would when he painted a picture of me, that's true. I was over there with my buddy, Vic Cappuccioni, big fat Vic, nice, great Italian name, and Birdman, Joe Basinski. Yeah, Birdman. And that's what we did. We didn't have nothing else to do. I mean, if I was at home, I'd be, doing something, around the yard or around here. But when you're living in the city, you're kind of restricted. You're very constrained. And especially if you're used to that kind of life that you had before. And So, Mom, after about 2 years living in that apartment, I think she got us fed up with it as Bob and I did, and we moved back to that, we moved out to the country, well, the rural area again, Mom bought a nice home. I landscaped the yard, Bob watched. And he watched well because you saw the pictures of his home in California, how beautiful that was. He learned that from me. Yeah, great. I have notes here. Remember, these are characters. These are characters out of our life back there. They were no relatives. They were just characters in our hometown of Birdville. Remember Willie Lump Lump? He was the guy that took a half an hour to get across that road. And he finally got hit by a truck. And the Rolls brothers.
Yeah, I remember.
Remember the Rolls brothers?
They were something else. Yeah.
There were two of them, Rolls brothers. And they were the strangest people. One was real big and fat. I mean, he was horrendous. And the other was real skinny. He was a really fine jet. And they were the strangest people. And they lived in this shack. And we never knew, but it was told that they saved all their money, and they would go around and pick up scraps and what have you. But they had all this money, and this money was lined their shack for installation. Oh boy, the stories used to fly around about that.
They used to pick and sell blackberries.
Yeah, blackberries, big business. But then we had Shakes. Remember Shakes? Oh, this guy was an artist, but he was shaky. And they called him Shakes. He was an alcoholic, and he had the DTs really bad. And the way he made money to sustain his habit, chemical dependency as we call it today, he would draw Santa Clauses at Christmas time and angels and what have you. But you would see these faces, these beards would be really bad. I mean, really bad. You recognized his art. That was Shakes. Let's see. What does this say? Oh yeah, I wanted to pick up on something you said this morning. You said that the truth shall set you free. And that's a very true statement. But I always liked that. Have a good time better. I wish that was up there. That was my philosophy. Have a good time. Bob looking around for truth, not having a good time. Right? Do both, Bob. It's okay. You can come out of the closet. Well, I joined the Navy. I was 17 years old, and I said, "Hey, I'm blowing this bird." I said, "No way am I going to stick around here." I knew what was in store for me. It was down over the hill to the mill, and I wasn't going to do that. Because I remember my dad, our dad, I remember our dad saying to me, "Son, I don't want you to work in the mill. Get an education." He kept drilling that into me, and I remember those words very, very well. I'm not working in the mill. Joined the Navy, and this was a period of time now that I'm talking about where I really missed my family. I was gone. I went to places like Hawaii, Indonesia, saw a lot of the South Pacific. And every time I went someplace, I always thought about the family, and I pick up things, artistic things that I like, and things that I thought that Bob would like. I was in Indonesia. I bought him a beautiful set. I don't even remember how many volumes of. How many remember President Sukarno? Do you remember President Sukarno? He was a leader of Indonesia and was overthrown in the mid 1960s. Now I happened to be there at the time. Well, when I came back, I had shipped a full set of the collection of these volumes, which reflected the collection of President Sukarno's art galleries. And there's some beautiful stuff in there. I mean, it's just full of color. And I brought a lot of other mementos, and Bob has a lot of those, and he has the volumes. And he told me one time that those books helped him on the Oriental series. And so that was a contribution there. Coming home to visit him was a trip. Here I've been away, and here he'd be toward his late teens now. I would come home and I would see him, and he would show me his artwork, and I'd look at it. And I was honest with Bob. Say, what do you call that? He said, well, that's gay. Remember he was talking about our dog, gay. And I'd say, that's gay? You were looking at it and were you drunk? He says, that's abstract, Ray. I says, abstract. How do you spell that? W-I-E-R-D? But then he started talking to me about it and explained to me. It's like the three nudes. And I'd say, let me show you some of my Playboys, Bob. This is what nudes look like. But I came home one night, one night, it was like a Friday night. I was stationed up, I was on submarines, and I was stationed up in New London, Connecticut. And I used to run around with a guy up there that owned one of these lobster farms. Those are from up in New England. And I told